At 14:36 hours on November 14, 1943, Chief Torpedoman Lawton Dawson heard the order, Fire 3. He pressed the firing lever on torpedo mount number 2. The primer was supposed to have been removed. It had not been removed. A Mark 15 torpedo weighing 1,500 kilograms shot from the tube, broke the surface, and began its run toward a target 5,500 meters away. The target was USS Iowa. The President of the United States stood on Iowa's deck watching anti-aircraft practice. Dawson realized what had happened immediately. The practice drill required primers removed from all torpedo tubes. Removing the primer prevented the firing mechanism from igniting the launching charge. Without the primer, pressing the firing lever would produce a click and nothing more. But Dawson had forgotten tube number 3. When the order came to fire, the primer ignited, the charge detonated. The torpedo launched. It was now in the water, armed with a warhead containing 294 kilograms of Torpex high explosive, traveling at 46 knots toward the battleship carrying Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The story begins 5 months earlier, on July 6, 1943, when USS William D. Porter was commissioned at Orange, Texas. She was a Fletcher-class destroyer, hull number DD 579, one of 175 such vessels built during the war. Standard displacement was 2,050 tons. Full load displacement was 2,924 tons. Length overall was 114.73 meters. Beam was 12.03 meters. Draft was 4.2 meters. The propulsion system consisted of 4 Babcock and Wilcox boilers driving 2 General Electric geared turbines generating 60,000 shaft horsepower. Maximum speed was 38 knots. Range at 15 knots was 6,500 nautical miles. Crew complement was 273. Armament consisted of 5 5-inch 38 caliber dual-purpose guns in single mounts, 6 40mm Bofors anti-aircraft guns in twin mounts, 10 20mm Oerlikon anti-aircraft guns in single mounts, 10 21-inch torpedo tubes in 2 quintuple mounts. The Mark 15 torpedoes carried by destroyers had a range of 5,490 meters at 46 knots or 13,715 meters at 26.5 knots. Warhead weight was 294 kilograms Torpex. The weapon was designed to sink enemy warships. It was equally capable of sinking friendly warships if accidentally launched at them. Lieutenant Commander Wilfred Eves, Walter, assumed command. He was 32 years old. He had graduated from the Naval Academy in 1933 and served on various vessels before receiving his first command. Porter was his first destroyer. The crew was inexperienced. Most sailors were under 25 years old. Many had never been to sea before assignment to Porter. The ship completed shakedown training at Guantanamo Bay in August 1943, moved to Charleston for post-shakedown repairs in September, then proceeded to Norfolk in early October. At Norfolk, Porter received orders for a classified escort mission. On November 12, 1943, Porter departed Norfolk as part of a 4-ship convoy. The flagship was USS Iowa, the newest and fastest battleship in the United States Navy. The other escorts were destroyers USS Young and USS Cogswell. Iowa carried President Roosevelt, Secretary of State Cordell Hull, Chief of Staff Admiral William Leahy, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, including General George Marshall and Admiral Ernest King. They were traveling to the Tehran Conference, where Roosevelt would meet Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin to coordinate Allied strategy. The mission was classified at the highest level. German U-boats operated in the Atlantic. An attack on the convoy would be devastating. Radio silence was mandatory. Navigation lights were prohibited. The ships traveled at 25 knots in formation with Iowa in the center and the 3 destroyers screening. Porter's station was approximately 3,000 meters off Iowa's port beam. The first incident occurred as Porter departed Norfolk. While backing out of her berth, Porter's anchor fouled the mooring lines of USS Cogswell berthed alongside. The anchor dragged down Cogswell's port side, tearing away railings, life rafts, davits, and ship's boat. The damage required immediate repair. Cogswell remained at Norfolk for 3 hours while shipyard workers completed temporary fixes. Porter proceeded to the rendezvous point and waited. No official report of the incident exists in any ship's deck log. This absence suggests the incident either did not occur or was deliberately not recorded to avoid documentation of damage before the mission began. The convoy formed up and proceeded east at 1800 hours on November 12th. Weather was clear. Sea state was moderate. The ships maintained strict radio silence and blackout conditions. On November 13th, at approximately 1400 hours, a depth charge fell from Porter's stern rack. The safety mechanism had not been engaged. The charge sank and detonated at preset depth of 100 meters. The explosion was detected by all ships in the convoy. Iowa and the other escorts immediately commenced anti-submarine maneuvers. Assuming a U-boat had attacked, Porter attempted to signal by lamp that the explosion was accidental. The signaling was delayed because crew members were attempting to determine what had happened. By the time Porter confirmed the explosion was a dropped depth charge, Iowa had completed a full defensive turn and the convoy formation was disrupted. Reformation required 30 minutes. During this period, a large wave swept Porter's stern, washing one sailor overboard. The man was not recovered. His name does not appear in casualty lists because his loss was not officially reported until after the convoy mission was completed. Commander Walter understood that his ship had now committed 3 serious incidents within 36 hours: fouling Cogswell's anchor, dropping a depth charge, losing a man overboard. None were individually catastrophic, but collectively they suggested poor ship handling and inadequate crew training. Walter believed his career was jeopardized. He needed to demonstrate that Porter and her crew could perform professionally. On the afternoon of November 14th, President Roosevelt requested a demonstration of Iowa's anti-aircraft capabilities. Iowa launched weather balloons as targets. The battleship's 40mm and 20mm guns engaged the balloons. Approximately 100 guns fired simultaneously. The president watched from the port weather deck. Roosevelt had been briefed on the demonstration and requested it specifically because he wanted to see how the Navy's newest battleship could defend against air attack. Some balloons drifted toward Porter. Walter ordered his gun crews to engage the balloons that entered Porter's zone. This was proper procedure. Each escort was responsible for air defense in its assigned sector. Porter's gunners shot down several balloons. The demonstration was proceeding successfully. Walter decided to order torpedo drill. Torpedo drill consisted of simulated launches at the target ship. The procedure required torpedo tube crews to train their tubes on the target, track the target through the sight, and execute all steps of the firing sequence except actually launching the torpedo. To ensure no launch occurred, the primer was removed from each tube before drill began. The primer was a small percussion cap that ignited the powder charge when struck by the firing pin. Without the primer installed, the firing lever could be pressed repeatedly without effect. Porter's torpedo officer ordered the drill to commence at approximately 1430 hours. Mount number 2 trained its 5 tubes on Iowa. The tracking solution was calculated. Range was 5,500 meters. Bearing was 090 relative. Iowa was traveling at 25 knots on course 120. The solution was entered. The torpedo officer ordered simulated launches. Fire 1. Click. Fire 2. Click. Fire 3. The primer in tube 3 ignited. The powder charge detonated. The compressed air launch system activated. The torpedo shot from the tube at 30 meters per second and entered the water traveling toward Iowa. Several witnesses reported hearing Lieutenant Commander Walter stammer when informed of the launch. One account quotes him saying, "Hell, no, what?" This may be embellished, but captures the moment when Walter realized his career had just ended catastrophically. He had not authorized a live torpedo launch. He had not ordered primers installed. He had not been informed that Tube 3 still had its primer. His ship had just fired a weapon capable of sinking a battleship at the battleship carrying the President of the United States. Porter attempted to warn Iowa by signal lamp. Radio silence was mandatory to prevent German U-boats from detecting the convoy. The signal lamp message was garbled. The first message stated, "Torpedo approaching from port side." This was incorrect. The torpedo was approaching from starboard. The second message stated Porter was backing engines. This was also incorrect and irrelevant. Iowa's signal watch could not understand what Porter was attempting to communicate. At 1438 hours, Porter broke radio silence. The message was transmitted in clear language. "Lion, lion, lion, come right." Lion was Iowa's radio call sign. The message ordered Iowa to turn hard to starboard immediately. Iowa's commanding officer, Captain John McCrea, received the message and ordered emergency turn to starboard at full speed, 28 knots. McCrea did not know why the turn was ordered, but executed immediately because the tone of Porter's transmission indicated extreme urgency. Roosevelt was informed a torpedo was approaching. His Secret Service detail attempted to move him to a protected position inside the ship. Roosevelt refused. He ordered his wheelchair moved to the rail so he could observe. According to multiple accounts, Roosevelt wanted to see the torpedo and watch how Iowa would maneuver to avoid it. This was consistent with Roosevelt's personal style. He did not panic in emergencies and often demonstrated curiosity about technical matters. The torpedo ran for 4 minutes. Iowa's turn created a wake that caused the torpedo to detonate prematurely. The explosion occurred approximately 900 meters astern of Iowa at 14:40 hours. The detonation was felt as a slight concussion on Iowa's stern. No damage occurred. The torpedo had either reached the end of its run and detonated automatically or had detonated when it struck turbulence in Iowa's wake. Either way, the result was the same. Iowa was undamaged. Roosevelt was unharmed. Porter had fired a weapon at the president and missed. Iowa's initial response was to train her main battery on Porter. This action is mentioned in multiple secondary sources but does not appear in Iowa's declog. The absence from the official record suggests either the incident did not occur or was not logged to avoid documentation of crew panic. Training guns on a friendly ship without authorization would have been a serious breach of discipline. If it occurred, it was likely a spontaneous reaction by gun crews who believed Porter might be hostile. Porter transmitted a clarification message at 14:42 hours. The message stated, "Torpedo was fired accidentally due to primer remaining in tube 3. The message requested instructions. Iowa's response was terse. Proceed to Bermuda for inquiry. Porter detached from the convoy at 15:03 hours and set course for Bermuda. Iowa resumed anti-aircraft practice. The demonstration Roosevelt had requested continued as if nothing had occurred. The convoy reached North Africa without further incident. Roosevelt attended the Cairo Conference and Tehran Conference as scheduled. The meetings produced agreements on Allied strategy, including the decision to launch Operation Overlord in June 1944. Roosevelt returned to the United States in December, having achieved diplomatic success. The torpedo incident was classified and not disclosed publicly. Porter arrived at Bermuda on November 16th. The inquiry began immediately. Commander Walter submitted a written report. The report stated that torpedo drill was conducted in accordance with standard procedures. The report stated that all primers should have been removed before drill commenced. The report stated that Chief Torpedoman Dawson was responsible for removing primers and verifying removal. The report stated that Dawson had removed primers from tubes 1, 2, 4, and 5, but had failed to remove the primer from tube 3. Dawson was interviewed separately. He admitted leaving the primer in tube 3. He stated he had removed the primer after the launch and threw it overboard to conceal his error. This admission complicated his situation because destroying evidence suggested consciousness of wrongdoing. Dawson was transferred to a general court-martial. The inquiry concluded that the incident resulted from human error, not sabotage or assassination attempt. Multiple embellished accounts claim the entire crew of Porter was arrested and held under Marine Guard. These accounts state it was the first time in United States Navy history that an entire ship's company had been arrested. The official record does not support this claim. Porter's declog for November 16th through November 23rd shows normal operations with liberty granted to crew members. Marines did not surround the ship. The crew was not confined to quarters. The embellishment likely originated from the fact that Porter was ordered to Bermuda for inquiry rather than allowed to continue normal operations. Additional embellishments claim Commander Walter was relieved of command immediately and his career ended. The official record contradicts this. Walter remained in command of Porter until May 30th, 1944, 6 months after the incident. He subsequently commanded other vessels and eventually retired as a rear admiral. His career was not destroyed by the incident, though it certainly complicated his fitness reports. Chief Torpedoman Dawson was reduced in rank from Chief Torpedoman to Torpedoman First Class. Multiple sources claim he was sentenced to 14 years hard labor. This cannot be confirmed from official records. What is confirmed is that President Roosevelt personally intervened and requested no punishment be imposed. Roosevelt stated the incident was clearly accidental and no malice was involved. Dawson served the remainder of the war without additional incident. Porter completed the inquiry on November 23rd and departed Bermuda on November 25th. She transited the Panama Canal in December and arrived at San Diego on December 21st. She was assigned to the Pacific Fleet and departed for Pearl Harbor on December 28th. Her reputation preceded her. At every port she entered, other ships would hail her with the greeting, "Don't shoot, we're Republicans." This greeting referenced Roosevelt being a Democrat and suggested Porter's torpedo had been politically motivated. The greeting continued throughout Porter's remaining service. Porter participated in operations in the Aleutian Islands in June 1944. She provided gunfire support for operations on Attu Island. She escorted convoys between Alaska and the continental United States. In January 1945, Porter was assigned to the Philippines campaign. She participated in the Lingayen Gulf landings, providing fire support and anti-aircraft defense. On January 6, 1945, Porter shot down 2 Japanese aircraft attempting to attack the invasion force. In March 1945, Porter participated in the Okinawa campaign. She provided gunfire support for the initial landings and subsequently served on radar picket duty. Radar picket ships positioned themselves between Okinawa and Japanese airfields to provide early warning of air attacks. This duty was extremely hazardous. Picket ships were isolated and attracted heavy Japanese attacks, including kamikaze strikes. Between May 5 and June 9, 1945, Porter stood picket duty continuously. She shot down 1 Japanese aircraft with her own guns and directed fighters to intercept 7 additional aircraft. At 08:15 hours on June 10, 1945, an Aichi D-3A VAL dive bomber emerged from clouds and attacked Porter. The VAL was obsolete. It had been the primary Japanese carrier dive bomber early in the war, but by 1945 was being used for kamikaze missions because newer aircraft were needed for trained pilots. The VAL dove toward Porter from approximately 1,000 meters altitude. Porter's anti-aircraft guns engaged. The VAL was hit multiple times and began smoking. The aircraft crashed into the water approximately 15 meters from Porter's starboard side. The VAL sank but continued moving underwater due to its momentum. The aircraft passed beneath Porter's keel. The bomb load detonated directly under the ship. The explosion lifted Porter out of the water. The 2,924-ton destroyer rose approximately 1 meter, then crashed back down. The impact ruptured steam lines throughout the engineering spaces. Fires broke out. The ship lost power. Water entered through cracks in the hull plating. The crew fought to save the ship for 3 hours. Damage control parties contained some fires, but could not restore power or stop the flooding. Porter began listing to starboard. At 11:15 hours, Commander Charles Keyes ordered abandon ship. Landing craft LCS-86 and LCS-122 came alongside and evacuated the crew. All 273 crew members were rescued without casualties. Porter capsized and sank at 1127 hours in position 26 degrees 24 minutes north, 127 degrees 49 minutes east. She was the only ship in United States Navy history to be sunk by a kamikaze aircraft that did not actually strike the ship. The underwater explosion was sufficient to cause fatal damage. The irony was noted immediately. Porter had survived firing a torpedo at the president. She had survived 19 months of combat operations in 2 theaters. She had shot down multiple enemy aircraft and supported numerous amphibious landings. She was sunk by an obsolete Japanese dive bomber that missed but exploded in exactly the wrong position. The reputation as the unluckiest ship in the Navy was confirmed. Post-war analysis examined whether Porter's reputation was justified. Historian Vincent P. O'Hara reviewed Porter's operational record and concluded that most incidents attributed to the ship were either exaggerated or fabricated. The fouling of Cogswell's anchor is mentioned in multiple accounts but not documented in any official log. The depth charge incident occurred and was documented. The loss of a man overboard occurred and was documented. The torpedo incident occurred and was thoroughly documented. Additional incidents attributed to Porter include accidentally firing at friendly aircraft, ramming another destroyer, and having drunken crew members shoot up an officers' club. None of these incidents are documented in official records. They appear to be folklore generated after the torpedo incident made Porter notorious. Once a ship gains a reputation for misfortune, subsequent incidents, real or imagined, accumulate around that reputation. The documented record shows Porter performed competently during most of her service. She completed all assigned missions. She engaged enemy aircraft successfully. She provided effective fire support for amphibious operations. The crew performed well under combat conditions. The Torpedo incident was an isolated human error that occurred during her first operational mission with an inexperienced crew. The subsequent incidents were either normal operational hazards or fabrications. The legend persists because the Torpedo incident is inherently dramatic. A destroyer fires at the battleship carrying the President of the United States. The President asks to be moved to the rail to watch. The torpedo detonates harmlessly. The crew is supposedly arrested. The incident is covered up for years. These elements create a compelling narrative. The narrative overshadows the less dramatic reality that Porter was a normal destroyer that experienced one significant incident and otherwise served effectively. Commander Walter addressed the incident in a 1960 interview. He stated the torpedo launch was the result of Chief Torpedoman Dawson's error in failing to remove the primer. He stated the error was understandable given the crew's inexperience and the stress of escorting the President. He stated he accepted full responsibility as commanding officer, but believed the incident should not define Porter's service record. He noted that Porter subsequently served effectively for 19 months in combat zones, and her crew performed courageously under difficult conditions. Dawson never spoke publicly about the incident. After the war, he returned to civilian life and worked as a machinist in Pennsylvania. He died in 1981. Attempts to locate his family or obtain his personal account were unsuccessful. The official record shows he served throughout the war without additional incidents. Roosevelt's intervention prevented any significant punishment. Whether Dawson felt guilt or simply accepted that mistakes happen in war remains unknown. The crew members of Porter who survived the war attended reunions periodically. At a 1958 reunion in Miami, a local reporter discovered the story and published it. The article was the first public disclosure of the torpedo incident 15 years after it occurred. The Pentagon confirmed the basic facts but declined to provide details. Additional information emerged gradually as official records were declassified and participants granted interviews. The sinking of Porter attracted less attention than the torpedo incident. 19 ships were sunk by kamikaze attacks during the Okinawa campaign. Porter was one of many. The fact that all crew members survived made the sinking less tragic than others where casualties were heavy. Porter received 4 battle stars for World War II service. This was typical for destroyers that served from 1943 to 1945 in multiple theaters. Porter's service record was ordinary, except for one extraordinary incident. The modern assessment treats Porter as a case study in how reputation can diverge from reality. The ship's nickname, Willy Dee, and the greeting, "Don't shoot," where Republicans suggest a vessel plagued by constant misfortune. The documented record shows a ship that experienced one major incident, several minor incidents, and otherwise performed adequately. The difference between reputation and reality illustrates how military culture processes error. In naval culture, mistakes are remembered and repeated as cautionary tales or humor. A ship that fires a torpedo at the President becomes legendary. The legend accumulates embellishments. The embellishments become accepted facts. The facts enter historical accounts. Future researchers encountered difficulty separating documented incidents from folklore. The Willy Dee legend is partially true, partially exaggerated, and partially invented. The torpedo incident itself was serious. It represented multiple failures. Dawson failed to remove the primer. The torpedo officer failed to verify primer removal. The division officer failed to ensure proper procedures were followed. Commander Walter failed to ensure his crew was adequately trained. These failures occurred because Porter was a new ship with an inexperienced crew conducting operations under extreme pressure. Similar failures occurred throughout the war on other ships but did not target the President. The response was appropriate. An inquiry determined the cause. Responsibility was assigned. Punishment was considered, but Roosevelt intervened. Porter continued service with lessons learned. Subsequent torpedo drills were conducted with enhanced safety procedures. The incident did not recur. From a training perspective, the incident was valuable. It demonstrated what could go wrong and how to prevent recurrence. From a historical perspective, the incident was embarrassing but not fatal. Porter's final action on June 10, 1945, demonstrated her crew's competence. They engaged the attacking aircraft. They damaged it sufficiently to cause it to crash. They fought to save the ship for 3 hours after the underwater explosion. They evacuated in good order without casualties. These actions reflect well-trained professionals performing under extreme stress. That the ship sank despite their efforts was unfortunate but not discrediting. The crew of Porter did not consider themselves unlucky. They considered themselves survivors. They had served on a ship that gained notoriety for firing at the president, endured ridicule throughout subsequent service, and ultimately sank in combat. They had survived when many others had not. 273 men went into the water on June 10, 1945. 273 men were rescued. That was extraordinary luck. The memorial to Porter exists in the memories of crew members and their descendants. No physical memorial was erected because Porter was one of many destroyers lost during the war. The ship's name was struck from the Naval Vessel Register on July 11, 1945. The name William D. Porter has not been reused. This is unusual. Names of distinguished ships are typically reassigned to new construction. Porter's name remains associated with the Torpedo incident, and the Navy apparently decided not to perpetuate it. The historical record is now complete. USS William D. Porter, DD 579, was commissioned July 6, 1943. She accidentally fired a torpedo at USS Iowa carrying President Franklin Roosevelt on November 14, 1943. She served subsequently in the Pacific Theater, participating in campaigns in the Aleutians, Philippines, and Okinawa. She was sunk by kamikaze attack on June 10, 1945. All crew members survived. The ship received 4 battle stars. The legend is also complete. Willy Dee was the unluckiest ship in the Navy. She damaged another ship while leaving port. She dropped a depth charge that caused panic. She fired a torpedo at the president. She was greeted everywhere with, "Don't shoot, we're Republicans." She finally sank when a kamikaze missed her. The legend is entertaining. The truth is more complex. The ship performed adequately given her circumstances. The crew served honorably. One incident defined their reputation unfairly. This is the Willy Dee story, not the unluckiest ship in the Navy. A ship that made one catastrophic error early in her service and could never escape that error's shadow. Every subsequent incident, real or imagined, was attributed to bad luck. The narrative became self-perpetuating. The truth became irrelevant. The legend endures because it is more interesting than reality. The sailors who served on Porter knew the truth. They were ordinary men doing dangerous work under difficult conditions. They made mistakes. They learned from mistakes. They fought well. They survived. The torpedo incident was one day in 19 months of service. It should not define them, but it does.